Machiavelli never wrote a manual on money, but every word of The Prince is haunted by its shadow. Money is not merely currency, it is influence, protection, and power disguised in gold. Armies march because of it, loyalties shift because of it, and kingdoms collapse without it. To understand money is to understand control, because in Machiavelli's world, wealth is not about comfort, it is about leverage. And today, in your world, the same law still applies. 1. Wealth is never neutral. It is a weapon. Machiavelli understood a truth that most men prefer to ignore. Wealth is never passive. It does not rest quietly in the purse, waiting to be spent. It exerts pressure. It demands movement, and it shapes outcomes. A single coin in the right hand can buy silence, shift allegiance, or end conflict before the first sword is drawn. Yet that same coin in another hand can provoke jealousy, stir rebellion, or expose the one who holds it to danger. Money is never an ornament, it is a blade. And like any blade, its edge cuts both ways. To believe that money is innocent is to live in illusion. If you are poor, you will quickly learn that poverty itself makes you vulnerable, for the world shows no mercy to the man with empty hands. But if you are rich, you will find yourself hunted, envied, and resented by those who covet what you have. In one case you are ignored, in the other you are attacked. Wealth, then, cannot be neutral. It either shields you or exposes you, either strengthens your position or erodes it. The wise do not treat money as treasure to be locked away, admired, or hoarded for safety. They understand that wealth is meant to be used strategically. Just as a general sharpens his sword, not to polish it, but to wield it. Money is a lever. It moves men, bends loyalties, and reshapes reality. The fool who thinks he possesses wealth is often possessed by it, enslaved to the need to protect it, flaunt it, or cling to it. The master, however, bends wealth into a tool, using it not for comfort, but for conquest. Ask yourself, then, with honesty, do you hold money as a weapon, or does money hold you as its prisoner? 2. People obey gold more than virtue. Men speak endlessly of virtue, of justice, of honor, as if these lofty ideals were the true engines of society. But Machiavelli pierced through such illusions and exposed the harsher truth. Men are not bound by ideals, but by interests. And the strongest magnet of interest is wealth. The hungry man listens less to sermons of morality than to the sound of a coin hitting his palm. The soldier, stirred for a moment by speeches of patriotism, remains loyal only as long as he is paid. The politician speaks of duty, yet bends his convictions to the highest bidder. Gold has a weight that no speech, however noble, can match. Virtue may command admiration, but wealth commands obedience. A preacher may inspire devotion with words about heaven, but the merchant who distributes bread and money will attract more followers than the holiest sermon. Loyalty inspired by ideals is fragile. It disappears when tested by hardship. But loyalty purchased with wealth creates an immediate and undeniable bond. Men may deny that they are ruled by money, but watch their actions. They work for it. They betray for it. They even kill for it. This is the reality Machiavelli recognized. The world does not move on faith or morality, but on transactions.
And here lies the cunning ruler's advantage. A poor leader, no matter how virtuous, is soon abandoned when he cannot feed his soldiers or reward his allies. His honor becomes a mockery, his promises hollow. But a wealthy leader, even if cruel or unjust, will find men willing to stand beside him, for his gold secures what his character cannot. Thus, gold is the silent kingmaker. It decides which armies rise, which laws are enforced, and which voices are silenced. Men will justify following the corrupt and despising the righteous, not because one is right and the other is wrong, but because one has the means to pay and the other does not. So remember this: Do not waste your energy trying to convince the world of your goodness. Men are not swayed by your virtue, they are swayed by what you give them. If you wish to command, you must learn to feed desire. And nothing feeds desire more quickly, more effectively, and more universally than gold. Morality may earn you applause, but money will make men march at your command. That is the nature of power, and it has not changed since Machiavelli's time. 3. Never depend on another man's purse. Machiavelli warned that the greatest danger to a ruler is dependency, for the man who depends has already surrendered control. Just as a prince who relies on mercenaries has no true army of his own, so too the man who relies on another's wealth has no real power. To borrow money is to borrow chains. To beg for resources is to place your neck beneath another's boot. The illusion of help may comfort you for a time, but the truth is simple. If you cannot stand on your own purse, you do not stand at all. Consider the prince who funds his wars not with his own treasury, but with loans from merchants or foreign powers. At first, he feels strong, armed with soldiers and supplies he did not pay for. But when the lender demands repayment, or when the foreign backer demands loyalty, the prince finds himself cornered. His throne no longer belongs to him, it belongs to the hand that feeds him. Dependency may appear like generosity, but it is in fact servitude. For the giver dictates the terms, and the taker, however mighty, becomes the servant. Even in ordinary life, the lesson holds true. The man who survives on the generosity of others, whether friends, employers, or benefactors, lives under silent command. His freedom exists only as long as the purse of another remains open, but the moment that purse closes, he is stripped bare, powerless, and humiliated. Machiavelli knew that true independence comes from not appearances, but from resources under your direct control. A skill, a trade, a source of income that belongs only to you, these are the foundations of freedom. Everything else is a leash disguised as opportunity. The cunning ruler, therefore, learns to build his wealth in ways that cannot be easily taken away. He does not entrust his survival to bankers, nor his armies to mercenaries, nor his destiny to favors. He strengthens himself by owning the means of his survival, ensuring that when allies fail or enemies betray, he still stands. To depend on another's purse is to give away your power before the battle even begins. Machiavelli's wisdom is clear. Only the fool entrusts his future to another man's wealth. The wise know that money borrowed is a chain, but money owned is a sword.
4. Money buys soldiers, but fear keeps them loyal. Machiavelli observed a bitter truth about human nature. Men will serve as long as their stomachs are full, but their loyalty ends the moment danger outweighs the payment. Money can buy you soldiers, it can fill your camp with men eager to fight, but it cannot guarantee their courage when steel flashes and death approaches. A mercenary army raised by gold is a fragile force because its foundation rests not on loyalty or fear, but on convenience. The same man who fights for you today may fight against you tomorrow if your enemy offers more. Gold brings men to your side, but it does not bind them to your cause. History is littered with rulers who mistook purchased loyalty for true allegiance. They believed that as long as the coin flowed, their soldiers would fight with honor. But when the treasury emptied, or when the enemy promised richer spoils, these same soldiers deserted without hesitation. Machiavelli despised mercenaries for this very reason. Their hearts belong not to the prince, but to their purse. He warned that a ruler who builds his power on wealth alone builds on sand. For money may summon men, but only fear and respect can keep them standing firm when the earth trembles. And yet, fear is not cruelty for cruelty's sake. It is a stabilizer, a chain that does not break when gold runs thin. A soldier who fights only for payment may run when he senses danger, but a soldier who fears his commander knows that disobedience costs more than death in battle. Machiavelli understood that men are fickle. Their loyalty bends with the winds of fortune. But fear cuts through their shifting desires and fixes their obedience. Whether or not they wish it, money motivates, but fear anchors. Therefore, the wise ruler uses wealth to gather followers, but he never deludes himself into believing gold is enough. He understands that payment secures their presence, while fear secures their performance. He rewards generously, but punishes swiftly, balancing coin with consequence, so that men know they are not free to betray him without paying the price. Gold may open the door to power, but fear bolts it shut. And in the end, Machiavelli reminds us, the ruler who relies only on money is fragile, but the one who combines wealth with fear becomes untouchable. 5. Hoarding wealth breeds resentment. Spending it strategically creates power. Machiavelli understood that wealth, when locked away, is like stagnant water. It rots, it stinks, and it breeds corruption. A ruler who hoards his gold, thinking it will secure him against misfortune, unknowingly paints a target on his back. His subjects envy him, his allies grow suspicious, and his enemies plot to seize what he guards so jealously. Wealth that does not move becomes a provocation, a reminder to all who lack it that one man's fortune might be redistributed if only he were removed. In this way, hoarding gold becomes more dangerous than poverty itself, for poverty invites pity, but hoarded wealth incites wrath. But money, when spent with purpose, becomes something far greater than metal or paper. It transforms into influence. A ruler who invests in festivals, armies, public works, or well-placed gifts does not lose his gold. He multiplies it in the form of loyalty, gratitude, and fear. A feast for the people may cost a king a chest of silver, but it purchases years of goodwill. A carefully timed bribe may drain a treasury, but it silences an enemy and prevents a rebellion that would cost far more. Wealth, when circulated strategically, reinforces the foundation of power, turning potential rivals into allies and potential threats into tools.
Consider the difference between the miser and the strategist. The miser hides his gold in vaults, guarded night and day, yet every guard he hires is another mouth eager for more. Eventually, the very men who protect his treasure begin to wonder why they guarded instead of taking it. The strategist, however, spends his wealth like a general deploying troops. Each coin sent into the world to strike at resentment, to buy silence, to secure loyalty, or to display grandeur. His gold does not gather dust in the dark, it moves across the chessboard, shaping the game itself. Machiavelli's wisdom is clear. Wealth must never sit idle. To hoard it is to choke its power, to invite envy, and to incite rebellion. But to spend it with precision, with calculation, and with intent is to transform it into a weapon stronger than any sword. The fool clings to his treasure and becomes its prisoner. The wise ruler spends strategically and becomes master of men. 6. Poverty weakens authority. Machiavelli knew that poverty is not merely a lack of coin, it is the erosion of authority. A poor ruler, no matter how noble, cannot hold his throne, for men do not respect words when their bellies are empty and their purses are light. A prince without money cannot pay his soldiers, cannot reward his allies, and cannot fund the displays of power that inspire loyalty and fear. His commands, however wise, become hollow echoes because authority without resources is like a sword without steel, impressive in shape but useless in battle.
Poverty strips the prince of his power before the enemy ever arrives. And poverty does not weaken only rulers, it weakens every man who wishes to command respect. In the marketplace, in the courts, in the councils of power, the voice of the poor man carries less weight than the whisper of the rich. His advice may be sound, his morals unshakable, but without wealth he is dismissed, silenced, and ignored. Society, whether in Machiavelli's Florence or in the modern world, does not revolve around virtue, it revolves around resources. Those without them live at the mercy of those who have them. Poverty is not only a financial state, it is a condition of dependence, where every favor received becomes a debt owed, and every step forward must be bought at another man's price. This is why Machiavelli warned against the illusion that honor or morality could replace wealth. A poor ruler, however just, is soon despised, for he cannot provide what his people demand. Even his guards, sworn to protect him, will abandon him when their wages are delayed. Poverty breeds desperation, and desperation breeds betrayal. The people will sell their loyalty to the highest bidder, and the poor man is never the one with the highest bid. Thus, poverty does not simply weaken authority, it destroys it from within, dissolving trust, collapsing structures, and leaving the ruler isolated and vulnerable. The wise, therefore, never allow themselves to fall into dependence or poverty. They build resources, not only for survival, but for the preservation of their dignity and command. For in a world ruled by interest, power without wealth is a dream easily broken, while wealth without power is a seed that can be planted. Poverty weakens, but resources empower, and Machiavelli knew that no man, no matter how virtuous, can rule from an empty purse.
7. Generosity must be calculated, not constant. Machiavelli warned that generosity, when exercised without calculation, becomes a hidden form of weakness. At first, the generous ruler appears loved, praised as benevolent and kind. The people cheer his gifts, his allies commend his open hand, and his name spreads as a patron of the many. But beneath that applause lies a dangerous truth. Constant generosity creates expectation, and expectation, once formed, becomes insatiable. What begins as gratitude quickly transforms into entitlement. The man who gives too freely does not buy loyalty, he breeds dependence. And when the fountain of gifts eventually runs dry, those who once praised him turn bitter, calling him greedy and unjust, cursing him for not sustaining their endless hunger. Generosity is a double-edged sword. If you give too little, you appear cold and miserly, and men despise you for your selfishness. If you give too much, you exhaust your resources and teach men to take your generosity as their right, not as a gift. In this way, both extremes destroy authority. Machiavelli's solution was not to abandon generosity, but to transform it into strategy. A wise ruler gives only when the return will outweigh the expense, rewarding acts of loyalty, silencing critics, or investing in displays of power that secure his reputation. Every coin spent must be seen as a soldier on the battlefield, never wasted, always advancing his position. History offers countless examples of rulers undone by misplaced generosity. A prince who empties his treasury to appear loved will soon be forced to tax his people heavily to recover what he has lost. And nothing breeds hatred faster than oppressive taxation. Thus, the very generosity that won him applause leads to his downfall, for men forgive cruelty faster than they forgive poverty imposed upon them. A ruler who spends recklessly will be remembered not for his kindness, but for his failure, mocked as a fool who traded power for fleeting approval. The cunning ruler, by contrast, gives rarely but decisively. His generosity is not a constant stream, but a thunderbolt, striking with precision, leaving lasting impact. He gives enough to inspire loyalty, but never enough to weaken himself. He rewards the few whose loyalty matters most, rather than scattering wealth among the many who will soon forget it. In this way, his generosity becomes feared and respected, not expected. Machiavelli's wisdom is clear. Generosity must be measured, strategic,
and purposeful. To give constantly is to enslave yourself. To give wisely is to rule. 8. Wealth creates enemies as quickly as allies. Machiavelli understood that wealth is never a shield without cracks. It attracts as much danger as it provides safety. A man who rises in riches will find himself surrounded not only by admirers, but by enemies. Every coin that builds his fortune plants a seed of envy in the hearts of those who have less. Men do not merely observe wealth, they measure themselves against it. And when they feel small in comparison, their admiration curdles into resentment. This is the paradox of fortune. The more you possess, the more others plot to strip it from you. Allies born of wealth are rarely loyal. They hover like vultures, waiting to benefit from your prosperity, but at the first sign of your decline, they abandon you. Today, they drink from your table, praising your greatness. Tomorrow, they whisper about your downfall, already searching for another benefactor. Machiavelli recognized that wealth secures followers, but it does not guarantee friends. It makes men obedient while it flows, but treacherous when it stops. The same gold that purchases smiles can also sharpen daggers. A ruler who believes wealth will earn him universal love is deceived. Wealth buys service, not sincerity.
And yet, envy is not limited to the poor. Rivals, peers, and even supposed allies will see your prosperity as a threat. In courts, among nobles, and in modern halls of business, the wealthy are targeted not for what they do, but for what they represent. A reminder of what others do not have. This resentment fuels conspiracies, betrayals, and endless attempts to cut down those who rise too high. Thus, every increase in wealth must be matched with an increase in vigilance. For while poverty exposes a man to neglect, wealth exposes him to attack. The wise ruler understands this balance. He uses wealth to build power, but never flaunts it recklessly. He rewards allies, but he ensures those allies are bound by fear and dependence, not just by gifts. He invests his fortune in strengthening his position, rather than merely displaying it to provoke envy. Machiavelli's lesson is simple. Wealth is a tool, not a trophy. Treat it as armor, and it will protect you. Flaunt it as vanity, and it will destroy you. The coin in your hand can summon allies or sharpen the blades of your enemies. The choice depends on how you wield it. 9. True wealth is control, not possession. Machiavelli understood that the world often mistakes possession for power. Men look at a ruler's overflowing treasury and assume he is strong. They see a merchant's vast warehouses and call him untouchable. But gold locked in a chest, no matter how abundant, is nothing more than idle metal. Possession alone cannot command men, cannot secure loyalty, cannot prevent betrayal. True wealth is not measured by what you own. It is measured by what you control. A ruler with fewer coins but mastery over the levers of influence is far wealthier than the miser who sleeps above mountains of gold but cannot move the will of men. Control is the hidden currency of power. To direct the flow of trade, to determine who eats and who starves, to hold sway over armies, councils, and markets, this is wealth in its purest form. For the man who controls resources, even without owning them, dictates reality itself. The king who commands merchants bends commerce to his will. The noble who controls the church manipulates faith for political gain. The general who commands loyalty holds greater riches than the banker who merely counts coins. Possession is vulnerable, visible, and envied. Control, by contrast, is invisible, intangible, and far more enduring. Consider how easily possessions can be seized. A vault of treasure can be raided. An estate can be confiscated. A fortune in coin can be taxed, stolen, or lost through misfortune.
But control cannot be taken so easily, for it resides not in objects, but in structures of power. The man who knows how to control the distribution of wealth, rather than merely amass it, can lose a fortune and yet rebuild another, while the hoarder who clung to possessions remains broken once stripped of them. This is why Machiavelli viewed fortune not as luck, but as something to be mastered, a river that can be redirected by cunning hands, not a storm to be endured. Thus, the wise ruler does not boast of what he owns, but of what he can command. He does not measure his strength by coins counted, but by men moved, markets bent, and rivals subdued. For true wealth is not visible, it is invisible. It is not in the glitter of gold, but in the silent grip of control. And the man who grasps this truth rises above kings and merchants alike, for he understands that possession is fleeting, but control endures.
10. Money without cunning is soon lost. Machiavelli knew that fortune favors the bold, but he also knew she abandons the foolish. Wealth gained without cunning is like water poured into a broken vessel. It vanishes as quickly as it arrives. A man may inherit riches, stumble into sudden fortune, or win vast sums by chance, but unless he possesses the discipline and intelligence to guard it, he will soon return to the poverty from which he came. Wealth without wisdom corrupts its holder, lulling him into recklessness, indulgence, and complacency. And once a man grows complacent, he becomes prey for sharper, hungrier rivals who know how to take from him what he does not know how to keep. History is filled with examples of kings, merchants, and common men who rose in wealth only to be ruined by their own lack of foresight. The gambler who cannot walk away from the table, the ruler who wastes his treasury on luxuries while neglecting his army, the merchant who spends faster than he earns, all end in the same fate, stripped of their wealth, mocked for their folly, and remembered not for their rise, but for their ruin. Money gained by accident or luck blinds men to danger because they mistake possession for permanence. But Machiavelli reminds us that fortune is a fickle mistress. She smiles on those who know how to master her and abandons those who treat her gifts carelessly. True wealth, then, is not simply about acquisition, it is about preservation and multiplication. To preserve wealth requires cunning, the ability to resist vanity, to spend strategically, to invest in what secures power rather than in what flatters pride. To multiply wealth requires foresight, the vision to turn one coin into two, and two into 10, not through reckless risk, but through calculated moves that tighten one's grip on influence. The fool thinks wealth alone is security. The wise understand that wealth is fragile, and only cunning can harden it into true power. Therefore, Machiavelli's lesson is clear. It is not the man who gains fortune who is powerful, but the man who can hold it against time, envy, and circumstance. Wealth without cunning is nothing more than borrowed glory, fleeting and temporary. But wealth guided by strategy becomes lasting power, a fortress that cannot be easily stormed. The gambler loses his gold before dawn, but the cunning ruler builds an empire that endures for centuries. Machiavelli taught that money is never merely money. It is a force, a lever, a weapon that reshapes the world in the hands of those who know how to wield it. To the fool, wealth is an ornament, a collection of possessions that shines for a season before it is stolen or squandered. But to the cunning, wealth is power in liquid form, able to buy loyalty, to silence enemies, to fund wars, and to secure alliances. Fortune may place coins in your hand, but only intelligence, discipline, and strategy can turn those coins into an empire. The truth is simple yet brutal. You will either command money or be commanded by it. You will either make it serve your interests
or you will serve its temptations. If you cling to it blindly, it will enslave you with fear of loss. If you spend it foolishly, it will abandon you at the first storm. But if you wield it with Machiavellian precision, directing it toward power, influence, and security, then wealth ceases to be fragile and becomes eternal. In that mastery lies not just survival, but dominion. So ask yourself, what role does money play in your life? Is it an idle possession sitting in your pocket, rotting in a bank, or wasted on vanity? Or is it a tool you sharpen, a weapon you wield, a force you bend toward the fulfillment of your will? Machiavelli's lesson is not to worship money, nor to despise it, but to master it. For the man who masters wealth does not merely survive the world, he bends the world around him. So stop seeing money as comfort and start seeing it as power. Learn to control it before it controls you. Let it buy you leverage, not weakness. Let it secure you freedom, not chains. Let it build you an empire, not a gilded prison. For in the end, wealth belongs not to those who possess it, but to those who know how to use it.